Everybody says Google Gemini 3.6 Flash is faster and cheaper, and I spent a bunch of the tests trying to prove them wrong. Some of those claims held up, and one of them really didn't. Google Gemini 3.6 claims fewer tokens, quicker responses, and better benchmarks than its predecessor. The real question is whether it actually delivers, or if the upgrade is a step back. One of the biggest problems I run into when using AI agents is turning their output into YouTube content I can actually use to market my product. That's why this video is sponsored by Subscriber, a tool that helps business owners connect their AI agents to YouTube and market their products without spending 10 hours every week creating content. You can connect Claude or ChatGPT directly to Subscriber. It then analyzes your business, website, and YouTube channel to help you create SEO-optimized video ideas, scripts, thumbnails, and even complete videos that actually match your brand. What I like most is that every week, Subscriber gives me a list of high-potential video ideas I can immediately execute, and it can even help edit videos for me, with or without my face, including videos like the one you're watching right now. It's easy to get started, and you can try Subscriber for free using the link in the description below. Now back to the video. Claim 1, token efficiency. So, you're running a high-volume API pipeline, maybe a few 100,000 calls a month, and your token bill just keeps climbing. Every extra output token is money out the door. Google says Gemini 3.6 Flash cuts that down, and that's the claim. So let's see if the numbers actually back it up. I pulled the artificial analysis index numbers, and Gemini 3.6 Flash is putting out fewer output tokens per task compared to 3.5 Flash. And we're talking a meaningful cut, not rounding error. That's a direct cost reduction on every API call, though this is a community-reported figure, not something Google put on their spec sheet, so I'd treat it as directional rather than locked in. For API users watching unit economics, it still moves the needle. This charge is dismissed. The efficiency claim holds up, and that token reduction is the kind of concrete, measurable gain that actually shows up on your invoice. So that's one of one claims holding up so far, and it's the one that matters most if you're running Gemini 3.6 Flash at any kind of scale. I've been living inside these AI tools long enough that I notice when a token count shifts before the changelog does, so drop a comment if you've already felt that output. Token drop in your own API costs. Claim 2, task speed. The objection you probably already have is fair. 12% faster sounds great, but who actually measured that? Speed claims are everywhere in model launches, and most of them don't survive contact with a real workload. So if you're running time-sensitive pipelines, a phantom speed boost that only shows up in press releases is genuinely useless to you. The 12% speed figure gets repeated across every piece of press coverage, but I went looking for a single independent benchmark behind it and came up empty. No per-task timing data exists for either model, so treat this as directional. The efficiency story from the token test does point the same way, which gives the claim some weight, but it's not verified. This charge partially sticks. The direction is right, press consensus points to faster task completion, but there's no independent data to lock it in, so 2 of 2 claims are still standing, though this one is holding up on consensus rather than hard numbers. Claim 3, benchmark superiority. Google says a Flash tier model now beats the older Pro model across the board, and if you've ever had to justify using a cheaper model to your team or a client, you know how much a benchmark number matters. The claim is that Gemini 3.6 Flash clears 3.1 Pro on 4 separate tests, and that's a bold thing to put your name on. I went through the Google reported scores, and all 4 benchmarks go to Gemini 3.6, Flash over 3.1 Pro. Deep SWE goes up 12 points, Emily Bench jumps from 49.7% to 63.9%. OS World Verified moves from 78.4% to 83.0%, and GDP Val AAV2 scores 1421 to 1349. These are vendor numbers, and independent verification is still pending, but the sweep is clean. Charge dismissed again. A Flash tier model clearing a Pro model on every tracked benchmark is genuinely a big deal, even with the vendor reported caveat. And 3 of 3 claims are holding up, with this one carrying the most weight because the gap on software engineering alone is 12 points. Alright, so 3 claims are holding up, but the 2 that could actually flip your decision are still ahead. Coding reliability without extended thinking is one thing, but the instruction following and spatial reasoning. Complaints from real users are the kind of thing that doesn't show up in a benchmark at all, and those are next. Claim 4, reasoning and coding. Google says Gemini 3.6 Flash lands at 49% on deep SWE, up 12 points from 3.5 Flash, and critically without extended thinking turned on. So if you're shipping code with a Flash model to keep costs down, that gap is the whole argument for upgrading. The part that got me is that these coding gains show up without extended thinking mode. In MLE Bench goes from 49.7% to 63.9%, all on standard inference. Google's launch coverage calls coding and multimodal tasks more reliable, and the numbers back that up, though independent coding tests haven't landed yet. Charge dismissed. The coding improvement is real on paper, and the fact that it doesn't require extended thinking is what makes it useful at Flash tier pricing. So that's 4 of 4 claims holding up, which is a pretty clean run so far. Claim 5, instruction following and spatial reasoning. You write a detailed multi-shot prompt, 6 or 7 instructions layered in, and the model just skips half of them. That's not a benchmark failure, that's a real workflow breaking mid-run, and users are reporting exactly that pattern with Gemini 3.6 Flash, comparing it directly to 3.5 Flash, which apparently didn't have this problem. When you look at the community reports, multi-shot prompt failures and weak 3D visualization tasks come up consistently, and the comparison is always to 3.5 Flash, which didn't draw these complaints. No published benchmark data exists for either model on these specific tasks, so this is user-reported, but the pattern is consistent enough to take seriously. This charge sticks. Instruction following and spatial reasoning are the one area where Gemini 3.6 Flash looks like a step back from 3.5 Flash, not a step forward, so the final tally is 4 of 5 claims hold up, and the one that doesn't is the one that bites you mid-workflow. So where does Gemini 3.6 Flash actually shine? Token efficiency is the clearest win. Fewer output tokens per task is a direct cost reduction on every API call. It clears 3.1 Pro on all 4 tracked benchmarks, including a 12-point lead on deep SWE, and those coding gains show up without extended thinking, which keeps the price down. And where does it fall short? Multi-shot prompt handling is the biggest one. Users are consistently reporting that the model skips instructions or rushes through them in ways 3.5 Flash didn't. Spatial reasoning and 3D visualization tasks are also weaker, and some users call it a regression overall specifically because it makes careless mistakes under complex instruction sets. Worth it if you need lower API costs and stronger coding benchmarks. Skip it if your workflows depend on careful, multi-step instruction following, because 4 of 5 charges are dismissed, and the one that's stuck is the one that breaks real pipelines. One thing Google's launch materials don't mention. I went looking for any extended thinking mode comparison for 3.6 Flash and came up empty. The coding gains are measured on standard inference only, so if your workflow relies on extended thinking to handle complex, multi-step tasks, you're flying blind on whether 3.6 Flash actually improves or regresses in that mode. If you're trying to figure out whether the Flash tier is even worth it right now, the next video to watch is Claude Sonnet 5, Should You Use It? Because it's the most direct alternative sitting in the same price range, and it answers a lot of the same instruction following questions that just came up here.